Welcome to this explainer. Today we are embarking on a really fascinating journey based on a profound piece of history. We're going to look at this through what we'll call Papa's take. You see, Papa, the author of the incredibly insightful newsletter that inspired today's deep dive, offers us this beautiful guiding philosophy. Influenced heavily by the grounding historical perspectives of his father, Papa Kubert, and his spouse, Colonel Debs, his take goes something like this. In our modern, TikTok-driven, meme-obsessed world, true historical remembrances, like National Donut Day, really stand out. They are solid, meaningful ways to bring attention to the absolutely incredible, good works of people in this country, and organizations like the Salvation Army. Highlighting history by having a special day to remember people's sacrifices while having a fun experience, like eating a donut, is just so much more wholesome and enduring than any fleeting TikTok video.
Okay, let's dive into this. When you hear National Donut Day, what actually comes to mind? A free glazed treat at your local bakery, right? Maybe a fun hashtag on your social media feed? Well, I want to ask you to totally rethink this sweet holiday. Because as we just talked about, using a donut to remember history isn't just a marketing gimmick. It's a bridge to the past. The contrast between our modern celebration and the actual reality of the past is literally night and day. Today, Americans eat over 10 billion donuts annually. 10 billion. It's just a casual, sugary delight. But the history of this treat as an American staple dates back to 1917, right in the grim, freezing, muddy trenches of World War I. This everyday pastry wasn't born out of some corporate boardroom meeting. No, it was forged amid brutal gas attacks, freezing rain, and flying shrapnel. Act 1. Into the trenches. So it's 1917, and the Salvation Army decides to embark on this daring mission to bring a little piece of home to the front lines. But look at that number, 250. Out of an entire nation, they sent just 250 dedicated volunteers overseas to France. Evangeline Booth, who was the national commander at the time, firmly believed that quality mattered way more than quantity. These women were handpicked for their absolute resilience, dedication, and raw courage.
And their packing list? Yeah, it wasn't exactly your typical baker's inventory. These women were equipped with gas masks, steel helmets, and .45 caliber revolvers. Imagine that. But right alongside those grim tools of survival were the tools of comfort. Hot cocoa, homemade fudge, and Victrola records to play music for the troops. It is just a breathtaking juxtaposition of the horrors of war and the warmth of home.
Now, you might be thinking that they were kept safely in the rear, far away from the action. Absolutely not. They were stationed with the 1st Ammunition Train, 1st Division, right in eastern France. They set up their simple little huts mere miles from the actual trenches. They operated right on the front lines, staring down the exact same dangers, from artillery shells to mustard gas, as the exhausted troops they were there to help. Which brings us to this really defining, emotional moment captured beautifully by this quote from Ensign Helen Purviance. She and her colleague Margaret Sheldon quickly realized the soldiers needed something more than just basic calorie-dense military rations. They needed a massive boost to their morale. A simple baked good was about to be transformed into a profound tool for hope. As Helen noted, they desperately wanted to satisfy the soul, not just a physical hunger. Act 2. A gritty recipe for hope.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer ingenuity required to bake in an actual war zone. They didn't have a commercial kitchen. With very limited rations, just basic flour, sugar, lard, and canned milk, they had to MacGyver the whole operation. They patted the dough into shape by hand, they used empty wine bottles or spent artillery shell casings as rolling pins, and to cut that iconic donut hole, they used a condensed milk can and a little tube of camphor ice. It was absolute next-level frontline innovation.
On their very first attempt, working incredibly late into a cold, pouring rainy night, with just one tiny pan that could hold a grand total of 7 crullers at a time, they only managed to serve 150 donuts. But the tempting, sweet fragrance of baking dough wafted through the damp air. It drew in these homesick, exhausted soldiers who literally lined up in the freezing rain just for a single, warm taste of home. But wait, once they were fully equipped, that number skyrocketed. These incredible volunteers, who were very quickly affectionately nicknamed the Donut Lassies or Donut Girls, were soon serving up to 9,000 donuts daily. 9,000! Just wrap your head around that. It was a monumental effort of grueling, back-breaking physical labor and boundless compassion, delivered every single day under the constant threat of enemy fire. Now, as you can imagine, over time, the story kind of grew into a bit of a legend. You might have heard these colorful myths about women frying donuts inside soldiers' upside-down helmets. And while that paints a super cool picture, actually scratch that. The reality was much grittier and way more dangerous. Take Stella Young, for example. She was cooking near the Met's front, and the firing got so incredibly intense that a piece of flying shrapnel ripped right through her tent and literally pierced her donut pan while she was using it. That is the stark, factual reality of their everyday bravery. These actions fundamentally shifted how the tough-as-nails military brass viewed these civilian organizations. Even Theodore Roosevelt Jr. openly admitted that his own skepticism was completely erased by their courage. The Donut Lassies proved, without a doubt, that deep care and unyielding courage could walk side by side on the battlefield. They completely upended the old, established ideas about what women could and couldn't do in a war zone. Act 3. A legacy set in dough. So, when the guns of World War I eventually fell silent, the impact of this frontline comfort food didn't just fade away, it resonated for generations. By the spring of 1919, YMCA Y girls stationed in Verdun were churning out hundreds of donuts a day without even having basic ingredients like milk or eggs. And by World War II, the American Red Cross sent Donut Dollies in these specially outfitted mobile clubs to feed Allied troops. It became a proud tradition of service that continued right through the conflicts in Korea and Vietnam. To put the scale of this into perspective, by the time of the Vietnam War, female volunteers with the supplemental recreational activities overseas were producing a staggering 20,000 donuts a single day. 20,000. Following right in the historic footsteps of the original Lassies, they risked their own lives, following soldiers deep into active war zones, just to continue that vital human mission of lifting the spirits of American troops. Let's move to and see how this builds a timeline that brings the whole story full circle. After that incredibly brave initial deployment in 1917, the returning troops in 1919, who were affectionately known as the Doughboys, brought their newfound love for the sweet treat right back to the U.S. Their craving literally paved the way for it to become a national phenomenon. And that leads us to Chicago in 1938. Right in the bleakest depths of the Great Depression, the Salvation Army launched the very first official National Donut Day as a fundraiser to help those in need and as a heartfelt tribute to the WWI Donut Lassies. This brings us right back to Papa's takeaway. This whole story leaves us with a few vital lessons. First, historical sacrifice doesn't always look like charging a hill with a bayonet. Sometimes it looks like serving a warm meal in the freezing rain. Second, true, deeply rooted history endures way, way past today's viral internet trends. And third, using a genuinely fun experience like eating a donut is just a beautiful, lasting, traditional method of keeping these incredibly wholesome stories alive for the next generation. So, I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. The next time you grab a donut with your morning coffee, will you taste the history? Will you take just a second to remember those 16-year-old soldiers shivering in the muddy trenches and the extraordinarily brave women who literally dodged bombs and flying shrapnel just to bring them a tiny, warm ring of home? That humble piece of fried dough is so much more than sugar and flour. It is a symbol of hope, of profound human warmth, and of incredible sacrifice. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep learning, stay curious, and always keep remembering the profound, true stories hidden right behind the everyday things around us.